Hey guys, I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
The men who watch.
If it's on a screen, we're watching it, talking about it, and sharing our thoughts about it with you guys.
Today we are going back to the 70s to review a well-known musical that neither of us had seen called Fiddler on the Roof.
So before we jump into this classic, we just want to first thank all of you who are watching our show on YouTube. Please like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It really helps us out a lot. And for those of you listening on podcast, thank you for your support. We hope you'll continue to do so because we love doing this for you guys. And we'd love to hear from you too, what you think of our show. So, Mike, Fiddler on the Roof. Let's get into this.
So just to set the time and place, it's a pre-revolutionary Russia in the largely Jewish community of Anatevka, Ukraine, whose residents are ruled by community and cultural traditions. For poor dairy farmer Tevya and his wife Golda, those traditions include getting the town matchmaker Yente to find their 5 daughters. The 3 oldest, Zaitel, Hodel, and Hava, who are barely of marrying age. Suitable wealthy husbands, especially important since the girls will have no dowries. Zaitel, not even 20, doesn't like that Yente only chooses old men. She's also in love with the poor tailor, Model. Model doesn't believe Tevya, I've been really working on these Russian pronunciations. Tevya would approve of a union between himself and Zaitel because of Model's poor socioeconomic, I tried so hard to get these pronunciations down, socioeconomic state, and without someone arranging the union. Huddle understands, I can see you laughing over there, Nord. Huddle understands these traditions better than her elder sister. Huddle, who has her sights on the rabbi's son because of what he is, not because of who he is. Who wrote this? This thing is not written very well. My gosh. All right. Hava accepts her fate, marriage still being years away, but she hopes for someone she will love while she now focuses on her love of books. Change from those traditions is in the air, which is confirmed by Perchik, a young man, a student exposing Marxist ideals, recently arrived from Kiev. This change may affect what happens matrimonially with Zaitel, Huddle, and Hava, but this change comes anti-Jewish sentiment sweeping across Europe, which may affect what happens to Tevya and his family, and the Jewish community as a whole. This was directed by Norman Jewison, and Tevya was played by Topol, Golda was played by Norma Crane, Zaitel was played by Rosalind Harris, and Huddle was played by Michelle Marsh, and Hava, Neva Small. This movie won 3 Academy Awards for music, cinematography, and sound. So I'll toss to you, Norb, but I'm going to say it kind of took me back to Bridge on the River Kwai, because all I knew is that was about a bridge over the River Kwai, and Fiddler on the Roof, I thought, well, there's probably a fiddler on the roof. That's all I know.
I knew nothing either. And so real quick, because after listening to it, I think I'm more confused about the movie after listening to your synopsis than it was before I just watched the movie. So I'm going to do the English version that's a lot shorter. So try this on for size. The story is set in 1905 in the small town of Anatevka in Russia. Teva, who's played by Topol, a poor milkman, and his wife Golde, played by Norma Crane, contend with marrying their 3 eldest daughters, Zaitel, played by, as you said, Rosalind Harris, Hodel, Michelle Marsh, and Chava, played by Neva Small, while attempting to hold on to their ancient Jewish traditions in the face of a changing times that lead to the Russian Revolution. That's a much more simpler, less complicated version, but hopefully between the 2 descriptions that we had, somewhere in there, it makes some sense. Okay, so before I guess we get into really head first into the story, my distance from this, because I guess explaining why I had not seen this before, part of it I think was the fact that the title alone just didn't really pull me in. I just never knew anybody who said you need to watch Fiddler on the Roof. I'd seen the title many times. My parents never really talked about it. And so I just never jumped at any opportunity to watch this film. And so, and the title just sounded like, okay, there's a guy on the roof playing the fiddle. How good could that be? So I had no clue what this movie was about. And so I was glad to find out it had really, the Fiddler on the Roof was actually a very small part of this story.
But important.
Very deep story. It's important.
Give me a minute, because when this movie started out, the first thing Tevye does is break the fourth wall and starts talking to us, which you and I love that when they do that. But for fun, he gave a really good open monologue, and it did explain the Fiddler on the Roof. And just for fun, I'm going to try to do this scene because I loved how it ended, and I'm gonna put forth my best Tevye, so we can have a good time.
You're gonna put a Russian accent on here?
I'm gonna try to put my Russian accent and get my voice low. So we'll see how I do. So what the heck is a fiddler on the roof? Well, Tevye, as he talks to us on camera, says, "A fiddler on the roof? Sounds crazy, no? But here, in our little village of Anatevka, you might say every one of us is a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a pleasant, simple tune without breaking his neck. It isn't easy. You may ask, why do we stay up there if it's so dangerous? Well, we stay because Anatevka is our home. And how do we keep our balance? That I can tell you in one word: tradition. Because of our traditions, we've kept our balance for many, many years. Here in Anatevka, we have traditions for everything. How to sleep, how to eat, how to work, how to wear clothes. For instance, we always keep our heads covered and always wear a little prayer shawl that shows our constant devotion to God. You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know, but it's a tradition." I really like that. That was really funny, clever. It did explain the Fiddler on the Roof. The best part is, again, how did this get started? I don't know, but it's a tradition. Yep. Right there, it's like that really tells you what kind of a ride you're in for on this film.
I enjoyed that opening monologue as well. And I was surprised because I didn't think they broke the fourth wall back then in movies from the 70s. So as soon as he started talking to the camera, I was like, whoa, he's talking to us. This is great. And he did. He set up the tone perfectly. And right away, I wanted to know, who is this guy? This guy's awesome. I love this voice, his mannerisms, his accent. It's so enjoyable to listen to. And what I've found after reading a little bit more about behind the scenes is that he actually played the part in the live Broadway show. So he was one of the few times the person who was in the show actually played the role in the movie. But what was funny is when I saw that back in those movies, they always had the credits in the beginning, not like now where the credits are at the end. Yeah. So right away, it wasn't the first and last name. They just said Topol. The father was played by Topol. And I thought, Topol, that sounds really familiar. And then I remembered, wait a minute, Topol was a toothpaste that I remember growing up and seeing on commercials. And I looked it up. I was like, is that what it was? And sure enough, Topol was a smoker's toothpaste back in the 70s and 80s. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually remembered that reference. But Topol, I don't know if I've seen him in anything else, but he certainly was He was fantastic, and I loved his singing voice, his persona, his acting, and just the timbre of the way his voice as he spoke and sung was really fun to listen to. So I loved the way it started. It pulled me in right away.
Well, and you spoke of the credits. When I was watching the opening credits, it said music by John Williams and Alexander Courage. And I was like, oh my gosh, John Williams with Alexander Courage. Now, Alexander Courage is known for the Star Trek theme, the original. But then John Williams, I'm thinking, oh my gosh,
I know,
John
I thought
Williams,
the same thing. I said, two of my favorite space composers combined in a show that has nothing to do with space. I was like, wow.
And boy, did that music have Indiana Jones moments or what?
Oh yeah, there's definitely the John Williams signature feel on a lot of those parts of the movie for sure.
Oh, the French horns, and of course, I said a number of times, wow, that sounded just like Indiana Jones. But of course, this was before Indiana Jones.
Yeah, 10 years before.
John Williams has a very unique style, and you can hear that in all his music.
Yes. And what you mentioned the opening credits. One thing I really enjoyed too is the opening credits all plays one take with the fiddler on the roof playing this very beautiful, articulate,
he was
fast
good
violin piece while the credits rolled on this one shot of him. I believe it was, I guess, a sunrise or a sunset. And the credits just played and it just kept going and he just kept fiddling away at the top of this roof. And I loved it. It was just such a great way to intro. First the narration and then the credit opens. Two awesome shots that set up this movie from the start.
Well, and what I learned is that fiddle player was one of the best fiddle players in the world at the time. So they got him to be in the movie and he was good. I mean, when I think of a fiddle playing, I always think of The Devil Went Down to Georgia by the Charlie Daniels Band.
Yeah.
But he was just as good as the fiddle playing in that song. So it was, I enjoy a good fiddle.
Yes.
It was good.
Yeah. So jumping right in, I did not realize how much music I knew from this movie.
Me
because
too.
I knew at least 3 or 4 of the songs that I had no idea were from this musical. So right away, he talks about tradition, and then the
Tradition!
first song, tradition, and I was like, I know this. I didn't know that was from this. And what was really great was first realizing that, one, I knew this song. This is awesome. And then 2, the editing to it, they had a lot of cuts to the music, to the beat. And I was like, this is really cool. This is
all
very
the cutting of
stylish.
the butchers cutting the meats and the cleaners cleaning the cloth and clothes, all to it was great. I like that too.
So I don't feel like I've seen a lot of 70s movies that cut quite to that. And when I think of other shows that they don't normally cut to the beat like that. And that was a refreshing thing. Again, feeling like I'm seeing modern day tricks, which talking to the fourth wall breaking, talking to the camera, cutting to the music. And here it is in a 1971 musical. So right away I thought, props to these guys. They're ahead of their time in this film. So right away, like you, pulled right into it.
And then I wanted to give a little bit of a credit to our good friend Dave White, who is a really good actor here in the Seattle area.
Singer.
And we've known him for a long time. And really the reason we're doing this show is because of Dave. Dave on Facebook about a little over a month ago posted just a very simple video of him in his sound booth singing the famous song from this production called If I Were a Rich Man. And what Dave talked about is Tevye is one of his favorite characters he's ever gotten to play. And he played this character a long time ago at the Village Theater. And he sang If I Were a Rich Man just with the music accompanying him in his sound booth. And it was wonderful. And I had never heard that song. And I was captivated by Dave's performance of not only singing the song, but talking the character's lines before the song, talking about how he wishes he were rich and, oh Lord, could you please, why can't you let me be rich? And I actually listened to his song a lot because I enjoyed it and the song grew on me. And then I figured out it was from Fiddler on the Roof. And that's what started getting me thinking, God, I've never seen Fiddler on the Roof. I want to see Fiddler on the Roof. And what's also interesting about that is that was then all I really knew was just that song. And so I actually, on my own, was kind of humming, If I Were a Rich Man. And I still hadn't seen the show. But the way Dave sang it is he goes, oh, if I were a rich man, diddle, 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 deedle, 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 diddle, dum. So he goes, diddle, 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 deedle, diddle, dum. So that's how I was singing it to myself. And then when you get to the part where it's sung in the movie, Tevye's character by Topol sings, if I were a rich man, yada, 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 yada. And it was, instead of diddle, diddle, he was going yada, yada. And I remember I was like, I like Dave White's version. So Dave, you
ruined it.
You won with me on that one. But once again,
expectations going in.
Expectation. I still love the song, but again, Dave had his own interpretation, and I liked Dave's interpretation. So just a little shout out to Dave. Thank you, Dave, for doing that little video in your sound booth. I'm really glad you did.
Dave is a great actor, great singer, and we've had the pleasure of working with him on a few projects now. So that's it's pretty cool how something like that, such a random event, can trigger something like us doing this movie. And actually, I don't know when I would have watched this movie had this not us doing this show and Dave's inspiration not kicked in. We might not have ever watched this movie. So I'm glad we did, because I really enjoyed this film and what themes and stories were brought out in this movie. It's not just music and fiddling, but there's a lot of deep religious and social aspects and themes that are presented here, and it's definitely a good piece of cinematic history.
So I want to ask you a question about those themes, Norb, but before I forget this, I don't want to forget this thought, but when you talked about the music, I had this transformation back to my childhood during the Sunrise Sunset song where it goes, sunrise, sunset, sunrise, and it's like a little trigger went off in my brain. And immediately I remembered my parents had that record and they played it. And I remembered hearing that song as a little kid. And it was like I'd been transported back to my childhood in that moment. And it was wonderful. And like you said, a connection was made. Something that I didn't know what it was really from was now connected much later in life.
Yeah.
So getting into the themes,
well, I was going to say, before you jump into that,
don't cut me off. Don't cut me off.
Sunrise, Sunset, again, I didn't know, I knew all three of these songs, but each one grew with a connection of, oh my gosh, this is in this film. So tradition right away, I'd even heard of the Matchmaker's song, was familiar, not as strongly familiar, but If I Were a Rich Man for sure was in there. And then Sunrise, Sunset, I've heard that numerous times, sung at weddings. I think I played that as a piano piece, but never the whole time did it dawn on me where it was from. I just knew, okay, it's Sunrise, Sunset. I've heard this before. And of course, it's Sunrise, Sunset in the movie is done, they have this beautiful golden hour sunset shot as everybody, the whole village is coming to attend his daughter's wedding. And the whole wedding is done with MOS, meaning there's no sound. You just hear the music over the top of it as they're doing the ceremony. And so it's like a music video. Essentially, it's the sunrise, sunset music video with a wedding happening in the background. And it was really appropriate. It was perfect. And it's all about sunrise, sunset. It's like the start of something in life, and then the end of something. It's the cycle that happens in a day from sunrise to sunset is the same in life, where things start and finish. But it was a beautiful scene in the movie where the music really got to be prominently featured, where nobody's singing it. It's just the scene with the music in the background. So
when they had that shot of the fiddler in the middle of the movie playing on the roof with the sun going down. And of course, I don't know about you, but the filmmaker in me is thinking, I'm imagining them all, okay, the sun's about, okay, get ready, fiddle player. Okay, the sun's, okay, go. And you got one take.
Yeah, because that sunset, in fact, they even show the sunset dropping down behind the horizon. And if you've ever tried to shoot during the sunset, it's so fast. The sunset is kind of here for a while, and then all of a sudden, it just goes away. So you have a very small amount of time. So as soon as they were setting up that shot, I thought the same thing. But they must have been really hurrying to get all those shots in before the sun went down. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful scene in the movie.
So getting into the deep themes, Norb, I'm anxious to ask you this question. This movie is all about a father struggling with letting his daughters go. And also accepting who they want to marry, when sometimes the religion isn't they're not in the same religion. Other times it's not a rich man, all the worries of a father. So being a father of two daughters yourself, I was wondering if this made you think about your own life and the future of who your daughters will eventually marry, and how will you feel about who they decide to be with versus, I'm sure if you could have your way, you would rather set them up with the person that they should marry that works for you, just like Tevye wanted to do.
That is one of the aspects of this movie I enjoyed a lot. Tevye is the father who struggles. Throughout the movie, he has these moments where he has these conversations with himself and with God. He goes through these pros and cons. It starts off when his daughter his oldest daughter doesn't want to marry the guy that he was set up with. Originally, she's set up with the matchmaker with this old guy who's almost as old as him. Yeah. And his daughter's only like 16 or 17 or something like that. And this guy's probably like 50 something, or I don't even know how old.
And he's already been married,
He's already been married and widowed, and he tells him he's lonely, but the matchmaker says, but he's got a lot of money and he likes your daughter, so I think it'd be a good match. And then his father actually goes through the pros and cons and agrees to it, but then his daughter finds out that he made this arrangement, and she pleads with him because we find out that she secretly is in love with Modal, and they've pledged each other. And so he said, but I've already given my word, I've already given an agreement. But then he has these one of many conversations with himself. He says, well, on one hand, the butcher has a lot of money. But on the other hand, she loves this guy. So constantly having these back and forths. Then he talks to God a little bit. And then when he does have these thinking moments, he looks back and the daughters are like far away in the scene, which is kind of like his detachment of, frozen in time and detached away so he can have this moment to debate this in himself. So I found myself asking the same question. What would I do? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's no matchmakers in our current lives anymore. That's a very old tradition. But the traditions of even just him being asked permission for his daughter's hand in marriage, and he's the second daughter. The boyfriend basically says, we've already discussed this and we don't want your permission. We just want your blessing, but we're going to do it whether you like it or not. And he's like, when did this happen? I'm being told that you're going to get married and I don't need your permission. So many times does he have these moments where he's being tested. Do I go with this, or do I stick with my rules and the traditions, or do I give into what my daughter wants and what will make her happy? And it did make me think about it. Unfortunately, I haven't had to deal with my own daughters and boys yet. They have not got into the whole boyfriend thing, thank goodness. But I know that day is coming.
That's what you think. That's what you think,
as far as I know. That's why we keep them busy in volleyball and stuff, so they're never out of our sight. But at some point they will be, and at some point that's going to come up. And I don't know how I'm going to be. I'm sure I'll have those same conversations in my mind.
I think
pros and cons. Well, I don't know about this, but she seems very happy and in love. A lot more debates I'm sure that I'll have with my wife about that. But I did try to imagine what that would be like if it comes to a point where she loves a guy who I'm not thrilled about. We all want them to come home bring a guy over to you who is successful and potentially wealthy and has a great personality and treats everybody nicely. You want the whole package, but most likely something's going to be missing off that list. And the question is, how big is it going to be? And in this film, it was often the case they didn't have a lot of money, or they had a different religious belief, or the guy was older. And these are very real things that could happen now. And of course, there's color of your skin, which didn't get covered in this show, but often is very current now. So I did think about that, and fortunately I don't have that relation to having to deal with it yet, but I know it's coming. And so it did give me a thought of, maybe
it's like Groundhog Day. You don't have to live that part yet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not there to have to experience what that's like, but someday I'll be forced to make that decision, and I can see myself having a pros and cons discussion with God above and talking to myself. Oh boy, what am I going to do? So,
well, for now, you should just keep singing that song, If Only You Were a Rich Man.
Yeah, that would solve all the problems, right? So
I like the part where Tevye says, where Perchik says, money is the world's curse, and Tevye says, may the Lord smite me with it, and may I never recover.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, we always hear phrases like, oh, money can't buy you happiness, or money is the root of all evil. But when you talk to somebody who's poor, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to say, yeah, I'd like to have some of that problem, because it's easy for someone who has some money to say that. But when you're at the poorest, and these people are very poor and portrayed in the film, it's all about trying to survive, and not just survive, but not starve. Their feeling is, if you marry the right person, you don't have to worry about starving. In this level of poverty that they exist at, that's what marriage is. It's a ticket out of this poverty, hunger-stricken world. So it's not just about finding a nice guy. It's finding somebody who will take care of you and provide for you, so you don't have to struggle to live. And that's why the weight of that decision is even more than, I think, modern day, because some of us don't have to worry quite as deep as that. But nonetheless, you're still torn with that decision.
Well, there's that scene where the matchmaker, even his youngest two daughters, which are like 10 and 11 years old, brings in two boys that are like 12 and 13 and says, here's the perfect boys for your two girls. And we got Bill and Chuck here, and Bill's the fat one. And then the other guy says, no, I'm Bill. She's like, it doesn't matter. They're both good. Just hook them together. You're set for life.
Yeah, so there's too young still. Oh, but that's why it's good to start now, so that when the time's ready, they'll already be connected.
Boy, and she was the nosy Nellie character too. Remember when she says, "There's a letter"? She hands it to her, and it's all open. She's like, "It's open." Clearly, she read it in advance just so she could know what's going on, know the gossip.
Yep. It is interesting, just the idea of a matchmaker. In this country, that's really never been a thing, but we do know that is the thing, and it had been very prevalent in Asian countries and even back in Europe back in the day. So that's
it's funny, in a way, your mom may have kind of had a little of that. I remember when you and I were in our early days when we were single, and every time I'd see your mom, the first thing she'd say, "You have girlfriend? You have girlfriend?"
Well,
I want to know if I'm matched.
Well, not in the Filipino culture, maybe not so much that they play matchmaker, although many times they will try to. But it's always whenever parents want to know what's going on. If you're single, they want to know if you've got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
If you have a girlfriend, they want to know when you're getting married. If you're married, they want to know when you're going to have your kids or your first child. And if you have a first child, when's the second one? I mean, it never stops. There's always that next thing that has to be checked off the list. There's always a next level that you're not at yet. And so
did your mom stop at 2 though, or does she keep asking you when you're going to have your third child?
I think they realized that was pretty much going to be it for us at that stage. But she wanted more. In fact, my mom, and I told me years later, I found out that there's only me and my sister in our family. She wanted to have more kids. She wanted to have 5, 6, 7 kids, but she couldn't medically. So we only had 2. But she wanted to have a big chorus of kids. All
just like
together.
in the movie.
Yeah.
5 kids.
Because most Filipino families, you'll see, especially the ones who are from there, there's usually a lot of kids. My wife's got 7 brothers and sisters. That's very normal for a Filipino household. But it's a little different here because, it's a lot more challenging. In the Philippines, you have a lot more help, maids and things like that. So you can actually have more kids and it's not quite as bad. But yes, so it's the 2 and 2, me and my sister and my family. And then I just have my 2 girls. So we don't have that big family experience, not like my wife did. And I know you have a family, it's just the 2 of you. So
yeah, it's 2 of me.
Yeah, very similar.
So what did you think of all the Russian dancing?
Oh, the choreography. I did make a note that there was a lot of really good choreography, particularly the one that stood out was during the 2 scenes. There was the graveyard nightmare scene.
That was cool.
I really enjoyed that. It was sort of like watching I was getting Thriller moments, Beetlejuice moments. I was like, wow, I feel like I'm watching a modern day horror musical in the middle of this 1970s show. But it's the point in the story where the father has he's trying to figure out how to get out of his deal where he agreed to let his oldest daughter marry the old butcher. And he conjures up this idea that he had a bad dream about his widow coming out of the grave and saying, if you let this happen, I'm going to haunt your family and all this kind of stuff. And they have this big graveyard scary scene where she comes out of the grave and flies through the air, which was cool to see some wire rig flying scenes, cameras on a rig flying at them. And then, it's pretty scary, but they had a lot of great editing, a lot of choreography, different people in these ghoulish type of makeup and outfits. So I really enjoyed that. That was a fun breakaway from this. It was this gritty world that we spend most of the time in this village, to have this moment in the cemetery, very surreal. And then during the wedding reception, they have this bottle dance where these Russian dancers put a bottle, like a beer bottle or wine bottle, on their hats, on their heads, and they're doing these hopping moves and skitting around, and there's like 5 or 6 of them or something, all doing this choreographed dance. It was really good. It was like, these guys are obviously very well-trained dancers doing this dance, and that one made me stand up and take notice. How about you?
It was cool. Yeah, same thing. It's the way I don't know what you call it, but it's where you're squatted, and you step around while you're squatted.
Yeah.
And I know that's hard to do.
That's
and
hard,
they make it look easy.
Yeah, they make it look easy. It's hard to do, especially now when we're old with really sore knees and stuff. But those guys do it well, where you're like knees bent and your legs are out and then up and back down. And really, really well done. So that was like hands off to the choreographer and the dancers. Really good.
That wedding scene. I remember when they got to the wedding, I kept thinking, and my son Brett, I watched this with Brett and my wife Cynthia, kept saying, well, what about Laser? We haven't seen what Laser, the butcher, is he okay with this? And so they get to the wedding, and finally Laser's there, and he gets up and gives him a gift of 5 chickens. And you're thinking, okay. And he says, I'm not upset.
No
hard feelings. And you're thinking, wow, that was really boy.
Forgiving.
But then a couple words are said, and next thing you know, they're screaming at each other. And apparently there were a lot of hard feelings.
Yeah.
You ruined my reputation. And
embarrassed me in front of the whole village. Like, apparently there were some ill feelings.
Yep.
It take long for it to come out. But yeah, that was a pretty tense moment where you just felt like him being there even was just like, oh, this is awkward.
I know.
But yeah, a good scene in there.
And it was interesting too, the fact that they go in this progression. The first daughter, she just loves a man who's poor. He sews and he's a tailor. And she loves him and he loves her. And so Tevye is like, okay, all right, I'm gonna have to deal with the butcher, but okay, I can deal with this. Then the next daughter loves a man who's just got progressive ideas where they just say, we're getting married, we just want your blessing. And that's a little bit more, and he has to struggle with that. But then the third one, it's religion. She's loves a man who's Christian, not Jewish, and that's where he drew the line. And he wouldn't speak to her and was angry, and it just made me think. I think even in relationships today, probably religion is still the number one thing that when the family decides, is this a good match for my son or daughter, it comes down to, well, whoever they've hooked up with, is there a religious difference? And I think that today is still probably one of the hardest things.
Well, this was definitely the most tumultuous part of the decisions he had to make, and had the most extreme reaction because his Chava, his third daughter, got engaged to Fiedka is his name, and he's technically Russian Orthodox. So, and they're Jewish. Obviously, two things that don't go well together. But on top of that, the other subplot to all this is that the Russian Tsar, they are, throughout the story, going out and they're kicking Jews out of their villages and forcing them to leave. And so the Russian government, even in this, the fact that they are personified as sort of like the evil empire, threatening everything about their existence, and the fact that he's a Russian Orthodox, kind of comes from the same side. So it just accentuates even more how much the differences are between their religions. And after they decide they're going to do this, he basically disowns her. Like I said, she's dead to us now, and decides we have other daughters. We have 2 more daughters. We're just going to forget about this one. And that's a big thing. I remember when he did that, because he let the other 2 go, have their way, with the man that they wanted to marry. But the third one, he put his foot down and said, no, I'm not going to do this. And I thought how hard that would be to be at such a disagreement with your child, to the point that you'd say, if you do that, I'm going to forget you and you'll be dead to me from that point on. I've heard about it from other stories from other people who've had to have been pushed to that level. And it's hard to imagine doing that same thing. At this point, I can't imagine doing it, but obviously people have done it when they didn't imagine doing it either. So watching him as the story unfolds, where that happens, and then at the end of the film, they do get kicked out by the Russian government, and they're forced to leave their homes and essentially all just find a new place to live. And his daughter comes there before they all evacuate, and he's still not talking to her, but she tells him, well, I just wanted you to hear my voice and say my goodbyes. And as they leave, and she's obviously very emotional because he's still not acknowledging her, he says very quietly, God be with you, I believe is what he says. Yeah. And that was his very subtle way, even though he didn't say it really loudly, the wife kind of repeats it out loud, but it was his way of accepting that, he was accepting her back as his daughter again. And that was a very powerful moment, because everything was turning out the worst case scenario for everybody in this village. Yeah. And he found it in his heart to forgive her, even though it gotten to such an extreme. So that was a very powerful moment.
The movie really ended on a downer.
It was. It
started out so lively and and kind of happy and jovial, and it really, the whole movie, it just slowly went down, and it never came back up, and that's okay. Yeah, I actually was thinking it would end on some big number, because a lot of musicals do, but it didn't. It just ended.
Well, it ended with the last thing is everybody's going down this muddy path to their various destinations, and the very last scene is the fiddler playing, lagging behind, but catching up to it. And I read that was to symbolize the fiddler represents the traditions that he's holding on to, and by the fiddler symbolically coming along, he's having to leave the entire village that he's grown, raised his family in, but he's going to hold on to as many of his traditions as he can, even though they're having to go to a totally different place. One thing I thought was that kind of was a nice production design element with how you had said it started out jovial and ended in a really down note. If you notice the way the weather changes, it starts off kind of sunny and warm in the beginning with all sunsets and clear skies. And by the time it's at the end, you can tell this was shot sometime in the dead of winter, because these people are clearly in the real snow. This isn't no fake set with green screen. This is a real place, steam coming out of their mouths. It looks like they're in sub-freezing temperatures and in the real elements. And that added to the weight of, they're not going off in the middle of a nice sunny day. They're going out in the worst conditions where it's freezing, it's muddy, we don't know how long this journey is going to take them. And he doesn't even have a healthy horse to pull his cart. He has to carry it himself. And, some people are sick in a bed that they have to drag along. I mean, it's a really miserable situation. So it definitely ends on about as negative of a note, yet there's still that little bit of hope that they will eventually come to a place where they can grow their roots again and establish their own new traditions with a few of the old ones as well.
Yeah, remember he says, where are you going to be? New York. I'll be in Chicago. We'll be neighbors.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure, when she says we're going to New York, were they really going to New York? Was she just saying that? Or because I thought, how do they have passage to go to New York when they're so poor?
I know, I was wondering that too.
I wasn't sure if she was just saying that because the rich guy was the butcher, Laser. He has relatives in Chicago. He says that. And so you believe this guy's got the money and the power. He probably does have somebody in America. But I thought, this poor family out in the middle of nowhere, they have connections in New York, in America. I thought maybe they were just saying that to, make it sound like they have a good plan. But I don't know if that's actually the case. I wasn't sure about that. Yeah. It just seems so desperate that how could they afford a ticket to anywhere? They're lucky just to make it to the next village over. But yeah, so not the happy Hollywood ending, but I like that. I respect movies that don't do the Hollywood ending sometimes.
In summation, I really, really liked this movie a lot. I'm so glad I saw it. And it made me think there's a few other classic musical films on my list that I want to see. So maybe we can do some shows on this. And if you want to watch this, if you have Amazon Prime, that's how we watched it. So free on Amazon Prime to check it out right now.
I agree. I'm glad I watched it. To be honest with you, I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did. And in preparation for this show, I was kind of putting it off because I've gotten so hooked on the Americans now. So that's my go-to show. Mike got me hooked because of this show. I'm now watching The Americans, which is also on Amazon Prime. That's kind of my go-to show. And when I had to stop that to watch Fiddler on the Roof, I was like, I gotta watch Fiddler on the Roof. I gotta watch this for the show now. I started watching it and I was like, this is really good. This is the music. I know this music, and wow, what great editing, and the production design, and Topol is such a great actor. Suddenly I went from, I have to watch this 3-hour show to, wow, this is great. I can't wait to watch the rest of the 3 hours that are happening here. So it was a really pleasant surprise. I almost regret that I do. I regret I didn't know about this earlier. I would have liked to have known about this movie years ago, because I think I would have had more time to enjoy watching it at a younger age and appreciate it later in life. So I'm glad we got to see it now. And it's definitely worth checking out because I don't think it'll disappoint you. It was a pleasant surprise.
Did any of your daughters join you for the viewing?
They did not, because I watched it at 5 a.m.
You really put this off, didn't you?
I told you, I was watching The Americans. I was like, we have to record the show. I've got a few hours to do it. So I better do it before everybody wakes up and before I have to do other things. So
I said, hey, Norb, I think, maybe have Sophie watch this with you. She's a little more open than Vanessa. And you said, yeah, we'll see.
Well, it was good. Well, to be honest, just truth be told, yesterday was Vanessa's birthday, which is by the time this show is airing, it's much later than that, but it was on the 18th. Her birthday's on May 18th, which is the eruption celebration day of Mount St. Helens, by the way. And so being that it was her birthday, we had a pretty busy day. Wanted to, let the girls kind of do their thing. So I wasn't going to make them watch something on their own. But now that I've watched it, I think I probably will at some point have Sophie watch this, especially since she's my oldest. And if I'm going to deal with boy stuff, I'm probably going to have to deal with it with her first, just because she's probably older. I think she would get a kick out of it. It's definitely one that I would watch with my kids. Maybe both of them, but I don't know. Vanessa's very picky on things, and she'll probably say, "Is that one of those movies from the old days?" That would turn her off from it. So,
well, what you should say to them, Norb, is say, "Girls, if you don't join me for this, I'm going to get angry. And because when I get angry, even flies don't dare to fly."
Yeah.
One last little Tevye quote for you.
Tevye has a lot of great quotes. He's always trying to establish his manhood and his
Big
authority
time
in the house, and we realize it's the wife who wears the pants in the family most of the time. But he's fighting to keep control.
And that's what makes him so endearing, is that you get to see him talking to God and you get to hear his thoughts. That's why we like fourth wall breaking so much, is because you really get inside a character's head. And you feel for him. You feel for his struggles.
Yeah.
So, because we all have them.
Yes. The movie's got a lot of great themes, musically and social themes. That is why you got to watch it. There's so many little things to appreciate when it comes to families, daughters, parents, spouses, religions,
differences,
social differences, socioeconomic differences. There's so many things to appreciate in this movie, and younger kids won't catch all that. But as adults, we definitely can feel it and sense it and apply it to what happens in our world now. This movie has so many things that apply to our world now. It's funny, 40 years? Is this 40 years past now, or 50?
71, so 50.
50. Almost 50. And yet it still has relevance, which is what's
well, and
amazing.
Even there's a really tough scene where his second daughter leaves. She takes the train to go be with her husband, who's in a Siberian prison. And he takes her to the train stop, and it's very sad. There's no one at this stop. The train shows up. She gets on and she's like, "I'll try to come back. I'll try to write." But even in today's times, our children, when they get older, they may live in a different state. And yeah, sure, we can video conference and talk on the phone for free versus the old days of long distance charges, but it still will be hard. Imagine, Norb, your girls meeting someone and moving to Florida.
I've actually been, not for me, but I've been experiencing that with my sister, she's a couple years older than me, and her kids, they have 3. Their oldest daughter, Brianna, she's actually graduated and has now got a job working for the military. She lives on the East Coast, and she's found what could be her future husband. Nice guy, great guy. And their second son, or their first oldest son, the middle child, he just graduated from college, and so he's kind of got his future set. And now the youngest one, who's close to age, not that far ahead of our kids, he's entering his senior year now, and he'll be going off to college next year. She's already talking about they might sell their house and downsize because the kids are going to be all gone. And it's just, it didn't seem that long ago when all these kids were I was holding them like babies, and now they're all off, doing their own things, and they're now entering that phase where the kids are leaving the nest and could potentially all be living in other places. And I thought the same thing with my oldest. She's only a few years away from that college stage, and she could be leaving the house, going to school somewhere else, and not seeing her for months on end. It's hard to believe because they're so woven in our daily lives now. But at some point, that goodbye moment's going to happen, and I don't think you can ever be. I'm sure I won't be ready for it, but it's not that far away, and that's the scary part. As a dad, that it's closer than it is far away now.
That's why, again, this movie has so many themes that are relevant even today. Even though it's an old movie, the themes, you realize that it's all about relationships. And those it has the same challenges today as it did back then. Circumstantially, there's different technology in the world, but it's still the same thing of letting go, accepting differences, all those things we talked about. And yeah, I'm so glad we saw this. And Dave, I'm going to bring you up again. When you sang the song in your sound booth and posted that video, I had a conversation with you, and you said you'd even hemmed and hawed about doing it. And I'm so glad you did, because it's that whole chaos theory thing that they talk about in Jurassic Park. One thing affects another. And by you doing that, I watched your video and was moved by it. And it made me start thinking about Fiddler on the Roof, which then I said to Norb, we should watch this. And we did. And now we've had an experience we wouldn't have had if you hadn't have done that one little thing. So I'm really glad you did. Just have to thank you for it. It's changed my life. Now I've got something else in my head for the rest of my life about an experience, and it has allowed me to think new thoughts, all because of that. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It is kind of like the if you build it, they will come kind of thought process, where sometimes if you're thinking about doing something, even if you don't know what the end purpose of it is, sometimes you just should just do it, because the end results that could come from it, you may never know. But just like you're singing that song, you had no idea that it would influence us to do this. So I'm glad you had that inspiration to do it. So for all of you guys who have little thoughts of inspiration of maybe I should try this, or make this video, or sing this song, or try doing this, you should just do it, because I think if you don't, we're denied the opportunity to experience that performance that might
As
move
Norb
us
would
in a
say,
way.
just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Not borrowing from Nike or anything like that. But yes.
Well, you were borrowing from Denzel.
That was from Denzel. Yeah. Just do it. Anytime in life, whenever you get into an action movie and there's always someone saying, we can't, we just don't have the technology. I'm not sure. Just do it.
Yeah, I think that movie was called Out of Time.
Out of Time. Yep. I think it's streaming somewhere for free right now.
So for the surprise of the show, I have decided I'm going to play my fiddle for you. That I've had lessons for a long time. Norb doesn't know this, but I'm actually a fiddle player. No, I'm not.
I was waiting for the punchline.
The reason I brought that up is because it's hard for me to find something that I've collected from Fiddler on the Roof over the years. Since I never saw it, I don't have anything. But as I let my brain travel through the story, one of his daughter's name was Yente, and for some reason I kept thinking of Yentl.
Yentl, yeah.
From Barbra Streisand's musical, which my parents took me to when I was very young. And Yentl, of course, sings the famous song, Papa, Can You Hear Me? Which made me think of Deadpool, bringing up the fact that Papa, Can You Hear Me? Sounds a lot like, do you want to build a snowman? From Frozen. and in the Deadpool movie, he's debating, Papa, can you hear me? Do you want to build a snowman? So my question for you, Norb, is that actually a copyright violation? Since you're our music expert, could it be said that Do You Want to Build a Snowman is a copyright violation of Papa, Can You Hear Me from Yentl?
Well, as I've learned over the years, copyright infringement is a very slippery slope, and it's not black and white. There was a point where somebody told me that there's a 7-note rule, that if you do a tune, as long as it's not 7 notes exactly to something else, like it could be 6, and then you'd be okay. But I found that that's not the case. It could be close enough, and if somebody feels like the whole essence of it sounds like another song, then a copyright lawyer could argue that that is a copyright infringement. But let's just, if we were to apply that rule, let's see. Do you want to build a snowman? That's 8 notes, right? And what's the Yentl one again?
Papa, can you hear me?
Papa, can you hear me? So that's 6 notes. So the fact that it's only 6 notes and it's a 7-note rule, I guess you could argue, well, you're 1 note shy, so you can't technically have violated it because there aren't 7 notes to rip off. There's only 6. So in that basic black and white, definition in a court of law, I guess they would be okay. And
that's how you learn what a musicologist is. Isn't that what a musicologist does? They they try to determine that?
I actually had a musicologist listen, because I was instructed for a project I worked on to create a song that sounded like, I think it was Taylor Swift, one of Taylor Swift's Love Story song. So it was for a toy line. They wanted to capture the essence of it without sounding too much like it, but sounding like it. You know what I mean? That fine
Don't
line.
you love that order?
Yeah. Just make it sound like this, but don't make it sound too much like it. And they actually they hired a musicologist to come in and listen to it and analyze whether it was violating the rule. And apparently I was okay, because they deemed it to be safe, and they went through with it. And Taylor Swift never called me, so I figured I was okay. I didn't violate any copyright rules, or at least
it's like, just keep your distance, but don't look like you're keeping your distance.
I don't know. Fly casually. But yes, it is a very slippery slope. But I think there have been many times when we've heard a tune that sounds a lot like something else we've heard in the past. I'll bring up another one. Giddy up, let's go, from Sleigh Ride, right? Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the NFL Fox theme,
yeah, you're right. That's the same.
Exactly the same in that little bit of the song. Then it changes after that. But if you matched all those, that's 11 notes. They're clearly NFL's in violation of that Sleigh Ride music composition. So whoever wrote that should sue the NFL and get some money for it.
So, well, then I have another question for you. You talk about, in films, songs ripping off songs. The famous one is, of course, Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters. So that was, accused of ripping off I Want a New Drug. But if you think of I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis and the News, it's I Want a New Drug. And then it's bwamp, bwamp. So that's two, right? That's just two notes, because all Ray Parker Jr. took was the wah, wah. Who are you going to call? Wah, Ghostbusters. Wah, wah.
No, but there's more to it, though. If you break it down, I believe it's well known that what Ray Parker did, they tempt Want a New Drug in the edits of that song, right? So didn't they kind of give Ray Parker Jr. that and said they liked?
No, but I'm just talking about your 6-note.
Oh yeah. Well, the problem though is it's not just the dan dan. The other part is the dan dan dan, and both songs have
okay. They both have that bass line.
So just the bass line,
yeah, that's 8 notes.
So if you just add those notes together, it would have been in the violation.
I guess that's why there was a lawsuit and there was a settlement out of court. So,
and they had a lot more too. The beat was the same, the tempo was the same. I think even the key was the same. You could put them side by side, and I think you could take the lyrics and swap them over each other's music, and for those sections it would be the same. So, yeah. So in that case, they didn't get away with it.
Well, it was a little bit of a long-winded discussion, but interesting, I think.
Yeah.
All out of Yente's character from Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes, and to add to that, actually, Yente was the matchmaker.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
The daughter was
yes, I got that.
Zeitel. She and speaking of Yentl, Zeitel, the actress who played Zeitel, she looked a lot like.
I think that's where it was coming from, right? Because she looked like Barbra Streisand.
She had the same overall facial features as Barbra Streisand. Yeah, but yes, Yente, which sounds like Yentl, was the name of the old matchmaker later, but Zeitel is the name of the daughter who looks like.
Yeah, you've got the Yent part in one character, and you've got the Eitel in the other character, which put together is Yentl. Yeitel.
Yep.
Yentl, Yeitel.
There were a lot of names.
Russian.
The names were definitely, you had to check your pronunciation keys. Tough names to pronounce there.
Well, great movie. We got to do some more musicals. I think we should do West Side Story.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah, I think we should. Because I know that's got a lot of good songs in there. And I think I even was talking to my buddy Pat. He was telling me, he listened to the show and he was talking about the choices. And he said, I'm surprised you put West Side Story in there. Because I know that was one of his favorites. And it floated there, but it didn't quite get it on there. But I need to watch it. I do want to watch it again because that is a classic.
That does beg the question, or would Fiddler on the Roof now be in your top 5? I did think about that.
I think I would have revised my list. Yeah, I would have put it up there if I'd seen this before I made that list. Which just goes to show those lists are only as good as your knowledge and familiarity with films, and we obviously haven't seen them all. Yeah. So if we missed one, clearly we're going to not put it on the list because we just simply missed it, even if it might be better than anything we would have put on our list. So, which is why, as we wrap up the show, if you have ideas for future musicals, movies, TV shows, or games that you'd like us to talk about, please email us or write it in the comments, and we would love to hear from you with your suggestions. Again, thank you for you guys watching on YouTube. Please like this video, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll always be notified of a future show. And for everybody listening on the podcast, thanks for hanging there with us. We hope you'll continue to listen to our show because we are doing this all for you guys. So we appreciate your support and thank you so much. I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are The Watchmen.
Thanks for watching, and we hope you'll make it tradition. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching The Watchmen.
Please click on here to watch other episodes, and be sure to hit that like button too.
And please subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll always be alerted to any future episodes.
It really helps us out, and we appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. And remember, we'll be watching.